Yo, what is going on, guys? It's Relic here, and today I'm bringing you guys a video that has been long overdue. It is the Ultimate Legend boss tutorial video, and I should have made this like a month or two ago when I hit 100 likes on my first custom card tutorial, but I was just too lazy to make it until now, and I didn't have much time. I just didn't have any motivation. But now we are going to be showing you guys how you can make a custom boss legend like the one that is appearing on the screen right now. So as you guys can see, this is the boss legend template. This is what it's going to come with. It's going to come with all the background and stuff, the particles. It's not going to come with the color correction, but I'm going to show you guys how to make that. You know, it's going to come with the text, this part, this, everything. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how you can actually use the template and how to put like a player in it, color corrections, change color, etc., everything. So let's get started. So for this video, we're actually going to be making, let me just go to my PNGs real quick because I'm not going to crop out a card just for this video. But you know, for this video, we are going to be making a Cam Newton boss legend, and let's not argue about if he deserves one or not, because that's not really the point. So I've got a PNG here. This is kind of a low quality PNG. I should have made it better, but I'm not going to be showing you guys how to actually crop a player, because, you know, if you're watching this, you should already know how to crop a player. If you're wondering how I do it, just check my previous custom card tutorial and I show how to do it there. This is kind of a low quality image, but whatever, we're just going to resize it and make it fit here. So that looks about good for Cam Newton. So obviously this is not going to be the finished product, because this looks nothing compared to the Calvin Johnson that was on the screen earlier. So first things first, let's go change the name. So Cam Newton is his name, so Cam and Newton. For the boost, I don't honestly, let's just give him +2 strength for the boost, and for the position, obviously he's a quarterback. And when you're adjusting the position, make sure to center it with this. So to do that, click on this, control click on the 99, press this little right side alignment thing here, and it's gonna move the QB right there so it's aligned. So now that you've got the player in, this is where you want to add the color correction, because color correction is the thing that's gonna make everything look hot. So let me just show you guys what a color correction does. So with the color correction, without a color correction. Now this color correction is going to be what I'm going to be showing you guys how to make. So let's just start with the bottom of this color correction. So first things first, you want to add a gradient map, and a gradient map, by the way, all color corrections you add at the bottom here, gradient map is right here. And what you want to do, you just want to make it a black to white gradient. It's there is a preset gradient right here. Set it to overlay and set the opacity to 65%. Next things, you add another gradient map, and this time you make it from black to blue, and you set it to screen, not overlay this time. Set the opacity to 28%. Now it's very important for you guys to follow my exact directions in like the color correction and the exact settings. So next, you guys go to the curves, and what you want to do for curves, you know, you put the curves, it's right below levels, above exposure. You want to move the curves down a bit. So let me just show you guys how it is normally. So let's just add a curves level here. So right now it's just like a big diagonal line here. You want to take the bottom part and move it down a bit, and it becomes like that. It makes everything a bit darker and adds a tiny bit more contrast to it. So that's the curves. Let me just delete this because we don't need this anymore. The third thing you want to add, well, the fourth thing actually, is another gradient map. Gradient maps are what make your thing look really good. It brings out a lot of color and vibrance into the image. So what you want to do is just make it from a darker blue to a lighter blue. And by the way, guys, this gradient map and this gradient map, you have to change based on what color you're going to make your ultimate legends. For example, if you want to make it yellow, you'd make this darker yellow, so like this, into a lighter yellow. You see what I mean there? So that's for the third gradient map. Next, you got a vibrance color correction. Nothing much here. It's normal at 100% opacity, +17 vibrance, +6 saturation. You can play around with these settings depending on what you think looks good. Next, we got the exposure. Exposure brings it gives it a little white filter, so it's not as sharp. So for the exposure, you just want to set it to lighten, 19%, and these are the settings. Just copy them right here. Next you want to add a levels color correction, and if you scroll down here, levels is a bit tricky to play with, but let me just show you guys what to do. So you go to here, press levels, change this to 1.15, and that's all you have to do. So it's pretty simple actually. Let me turn that back on. So for the next one, you add a brightness / contrast layer. This is one of the more commonly used color corrections, normal at 100%, nothing special there. Change the brightness to 85%, contrast to 19%. For this, I might actually lower the brightness a bit to maybe around 60, because it was a bit bright before, so I'm going to change it to 65, but just, play around with these settings, and yeah, see, that's a lot, though it's way too bright. So play around with these settings, and whatever you think looks good is what you should use. So next you add a color fill, set it to overlay 17%, and make it kind of a bit above the black here, so a bit of a grayish color. Next one, you add a navy blue color fill. Now this doesn't change based on the color you're making your Ultimate Legend, it stays the same. And then the very last one is a curves, and this is at normal at 5%, by the way. It's just a tiny little touch up. And for this one, you add a curves layer, 50% opacity, and instead of like taking the bottom part of the arc and pushing it down, you take the upper part of the arc and push it up this time, and it gives you a different effect. So that's the primary CC. Now above this, we're actually going to add a photo filter, and for the photo filter, it's right here below black and white. We're going to make it the color of the card. So in this case it's blue, so we're gonna make the color kind of like this blue. Now I'm gonna let's say we're gonna put it at 50% for this, the density, just how much it shows, and you guys can play with that and see what you think looks good. So let's just let me show you the before and after. Before after, it just gives more of a blue look to the player. And you also want to add another curves layer above this. This isn't always necessary, but if you have like an image that's way too bright in the background, you're going to want to add this and push it down a bit so the image gets a bit darker, and that looks about good. And also above the background here, you want to add a brightness / contrast level, color correction I mean. You're going to want to push it down a bit, not too much, but like enough so the color doesn't overpower the player itself. So let's say -10. So that's gonna be about it for all the color corrections you have to do. Now we need to add a layer style to the player, and the layer style that I always add to players on cards is an inner glow, outer glow, and a color overlay sometimes if the player is too dark. But this one doesn't require a color overlay because Cam Newton's pretty bright. Like some players with like really dark skin, they need the color overlay, but for this one you don't. Let me just show you guys the settings I use. So inner glow, overlay, size 16 at 80% opacity, it gives it a glow effect. And then outer, oh shoot, not that, we're not adding gradient overlay. And then an outer glow at 75% and size 15. And obviously you guys can play with these settings, whatever I say. I mean, Photoshop is really about what you think looks good, and I'm not here to tell you what looks good to you. So now that you've got the layer style on the player, we want to add a bit of a motion blur effect. So for this, we're going to duplicate it, so press Ctrl J, or just right click and duplicate, but Ctrl J is easier. So for the motion blur, it's going to be in filter, blur, motion blur. It's going to be a 45-degree motion blur, so it goes diagonally upwards, and it's going to be really big. So it's going to be let's say it's gonna be around 1000. So that's gonna be our motion blur. Press OK, and for the motion blur layer, you want to change the layer style. Take off inner glow and outer glow because it makes it way too bright, and just put a color overlay on. And now what you want to do to the motion blur layer is you take the eraser, make sure it's around at 50% opacity, so when you erase part of the motion blur, it's not as like it's more of a smooth cut. So what you want to do is you want to erase the motion blur that's not coming from the right side of the player. So basically everything here you want to keep, but everything below it you want to just erase. You just want to erase everything here, and just keep doing it slow and steady until you think it looks good. And there we go. So this is looking pretty good so far. it's actually pretty much at its finalized state here. The only thing that I think I'm gonna try playing around with this curves a bit, because I still think it's a bit too bright. Let me go add a curves layer down here and maybe lower it a bit. Yeah, so that's looking a bit better. Let me put it up a bit. And this is just where you guys need to make the decision for yourself on what you want to do in terms of color corrections. It's just add these finishing touches until you think it looks good. And I'm actually going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a new layer here, and I'm going to change this to black. Take my brush, make sure it's a soft brush, so it's this one. I'm going to add a bit of a black spot here in the top right hand corner, and I'm going to lower the opacity a bit just so the text is easier to read. And yeah, so that's just a tiny touch there. And I'm gonna show you guys what things you need to change if you want to make it a different color. If you want to make the, say that you're using like an Antonio Brown and you want to make a Boss Legend, so obviously the background isn't going to be blue for that. So in the PSD that I will leave in the description, I'm gonna label these ones that you need to change the color of. But to change the color of these layers, just go here, press Ctrl U, brings up hue saturation, and change it to where it's yellow. So let's say it's like right here, -120. You're gonna want to do these for every other layer that you want to affect. So where it says change, just do Ctrl U and do -147 for every single one. I'm not gonna do that here because we're gonna keep it blue. But yeah, guys, that's basically how you make a Boss Legend. Let me know in the comments what other things you want me to show you guys how to make, like maybe a logo, simple logo tutorial, thumbnail tutorial, I don't know. But thank you guys for watching this tutorial. Hopefully you found it helpful. All the download links will be in the description, and until next time, Relic out.